Ever get that, like, I don't know, nagging feeling?
Mm-hmm.
The shiny tech we love, our phones, our gadget, they all have like a hidden cost.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we're going deep, really deep,
Mm-hmm.
into the heart of the Congo,
Okay.
exploring, the century-long history behind
Hmm.
the cobalt that powers like pretty much everything in our modern world.
Yeah, it's a story that really it intertwines, I guess you could say, technological advancement with human exploitation,
Yeah.
A really complex narrative actually. It goes back way further than most people I think realize.
So to guide us through this journey, we're looking at a really powerful episode of NPR's Throughline podcast. Have you ever listened to Throughline?
I have. Yeah, it's a great podcast.
It's really good,
Huh?
and I think this one especially. Through historical accounts, they use expert interviews.
Mm.
On-the-ground audio will uncover how, a nation's fate
Mm-hmm.
became so intertwined with the demand for resources from, like, rubber in the 1800s
Wow.
to the cobalt powering, all our devices today.
Hmm.
It's crazy.
Yeah, the episode starts by I think painting a really vivid picture of the late 19th century, so, the dawn of the automobile. Rubber was king.
Oh, wow.
And at the center of this whole story is a figure who might surprise you.
Okay, who?
King Leopold II of Belgium.
King Leopold. I vaguely remember him from history class. Wasn't he infamous for his brutal reign in Africa?
Precisely. Leopold, he controlled this vast territory in Central Africa, known as the Congo Free State.
Okay.
And when the global demand for rubber just soared, he saw an opportunity
Oh yeah.
for immense wealth, but at a terrible human cost.
So we're talking about like the rubber terror, right?
Yeah.
I read about this a little bit. The horrific forced labor and the atrocities
Yeah.
committed against the Congolese people.
Yeah, and the podcast it pulls no punches in depicting like the brutality of that era.
Yep.
It highlights the work of this guy Edmund Morel, a British shipping clerk, who noticed a disturbing pattern in the shipping records coming from the Congo. Tons of rubber and ivory were being shipped out, but the only things coming back were weapons and soldiers.
Mhm.
And this discrepancy, it raised some red flags for Morel,
Right.
and he was determined to expose the truth.
So he became like an early investigative journalist, I guess,
Right.
digging into King Leopold's regime.
Exactly. Morel quit his job, dedicated his life to unveiling these horrors that were unfolding in the Congo. He gathered evidence, he published articles and pamphlets, and just tirelessly campaigned to raise awareness
Yeah.
about King Leopold and his atrocities.
That's incredible. It must have been like so dangerous, right? Given the power and influence of a king at that time.
Oh, absolutely. It was. But Morel, he persevered, driven by this sense of moral outrage and, a commitment to exposing the truth. And his efforts, actually, they played a pivotal role in sparking a global human rights movement.
Yeah.
That ultimately forced Leopold to relinquish control of the Congo Free State in 1908.
Wow. So it did have an impact.
It did.
Yeah, it's hard to, I think, fully grasp the scale of suffering
Yeah.
the Congolese people endured during that period.
And the podcast does like a really good job of bringing it to life through these firsthand accounts and these photographs, including some from this guy William Henry Shepherd,
Okay.
a Black American missionary who lived among the Kuba people in the Congo during this time.
Wow.
His writings and photos, they offer this glimpse into both the beauty of Congolese culture and the brutality that was inflicted upon them.
So Shepard's perspective must be, I mean, particularly insightful, right? Given like the racial dynamics of that time, Black American witnessing the exploitation of another African nation,
Right.
it adds like a whole other complex layer to this story.
Absolutely. Shepard's account, it's so unique. It's this invaluable perspective highlighting, the shared struggle against oppression and colonialism. He really admired the resilience and dignity of the Kuba people, even in the face of, just unimaginable hardship.
So it sounds like, Morel's activism
Mm-hmm.
and Shepard's documentation,
Mm-hmm.
Both really played like key roles in bringing the truth to light.
Yeah.
But did it truly, did it end the exploitation in the Congo?
Sadly, no. While Leopold's, reign of terror, it officially ended. The Congo's troubles were far from over.
Right.
The seeds of exploitation, they'd been sown, and
Mm.
it created this pattern that would sadly continue to
Mm.
play out in the decades to come.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The transition to independence, though, for the Congo, it wasn't smooth.
Right.
In 1960, they gained independence from Belgium,
Right.
but quickly found themselves, kind of caught in the crosshairs of the Cold War.
Oh, wow.
And the focus shifted to another valuable resource, uranium.
Uranium. So from rubber for tires to uranium for nuclear weapons, the Congo's resources were still like driving global powers.
Yeah.
What impact did that have on the newly formed nation?
Well, the Congo basically became like a strategic battleground. Both
Yeah.
the U.S. and Soviet Union, locked in this nuclear arms race.
Right.
They sought control of the Congo's rich uranium deposit.
Of course. Yeah.
And this is where we meet Patrice Lumumba, the Congo's first prime minister,
Yeah.
this really charismatic leader with a vision for a truly independent and self-sufficient Congo.
So Lumumba's vision sounds like a direct challenge to the existing, like power structures. He wasn't content with just like replacing Belgian rule with another form of foreign control.
Exactly. He advocated for nationalizing the Congo's resources, including those uranium mines, ensuring that they benefited the Congolese people,
Right.
not foreign powers.
Yeah,
And this stance, especially during the Cold War, made him a target.
I can imagine. That didn't sit well with the superpowers vying for control. Did Lumumba did he lean towards either side, the U.S. or Soviet?
Well, while Lumumba sought support from both sides, he maintained this commitment to Congolese self-determination.
Right.
And the Throughline episode, explores this, the complexities of his leadership and the socialist leanings that made him a threat to Western interests who saw him as a potential communist ally.
Right.
Yeah.
So the Cold War context definitely like played a significant role in shaping Lumumba's fate. Was he able to hold on to power despite all these pressures?
Sadly, no. Lumumba's time in power was tragically cut short.
Yeah.
The podcast really meticulously details the events leading up to his assassination in 1961, a plot orchestrated by Western powers, with the help of Belgian authorities, who saw him as too radical and unpredictable.
So once again, outside forces interfered in the Congo's destiny, removing a leader who dared to challenge the status quo. This pattern of exploitation seems to be like deeply ingrained in the Congo's history.
It's a recurring theme, a cycle of outside powers just manipulating the Congo's resources and leadership for their own gain. And Lumumba's assassination
Right.
had ripple effects throughout Africa,
Mm.
Silencing other leaders who might have challenged, the existing power structures.
Wow.
And it plunged the Congo into decades of instability, corruption, and continued foreign influence.
So what happened after Lumumba's assassination? Did the Congo fall into the control of a leader more amenable to Western interests?
You guessed it.
Okay.
The reins of power were seized by Mobutu Sese Seko, a dictator who ruled the country with an iron fist for over 30 years.
Wow.
Mobutu was backed by Western powers and allowed them continued access to the Congo's vast resources, further perpetuating that cycle of exploitation.
So from King Leopold II to the Cold War manipulations and Mobutu's dictatorship, the Congolese people faced just a relentless series of challenges.
Mm.
But our deep dive isn't over yet.
Yeah.
How does cobalt, the metal at the heart of our modern devices,
Yeah.
how does that fit into this complex history?
That's where our story takes another turn, leaping forward to the late 20th and early 21st centuries. With the rise of personal electronics and more recently electric vehicles,
Right.
the global demand for cobalt just explodes once again, and the Congo, holding an estimated 70% of the world's cobalt reserves, finds itself right at the center of this new resource rush.
So the stage is set, I guess you could say, for a modern day resource rush.
Hmm.
But this time it's not rubber, it's not uranium, it's cobalt.
Right.
This tiny metal, it's essential for lithium-ion batteries, and it's suddenly in such high demand, right? I mean, it's powering our smartphones, our laptops, and electric vehicles,
Yeah.
which are touted as the future of transportation. And once again, the Congo finds itself at the heart of it all.
Yeah, and the Throughline episode, it makes this really direct connection between, the rubber terror of the past and the cobalt rush of the present. It highlights the work of individuals like Siddharth Kaura,
Okay, yeah.
a researcher who bravely ventured into the cobalt mines, to document the conditions firsthand.
Wow.
He describes it as a modern form of slave labor,
Mm.
a deeply unsettling parallel to the exploitation that occurred under King Leopold II, over a century ago.
It's disturbing to think that despite all the technological and social progress we've made, certain patterns of exploitation, they just seem to persist.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on what Kara found in those cobalt mines? What was it like?
Well, Kari, he paints this really bleak picture.
Yeah.
He describes, thousands of Congolese men, women, and even children working in these hazardous, unregulated mines, often digging by hand
Well, wow.
with rudimentary tools. They're exposed to this toxic cobalt dust, which can lead to, severe respiratory problems
Yeah.
and other health issues. And for their back-breaking labor, they earn these meager wages, barely enough to survive.
It's a stark reminder, I think, that the clean energy revolution, symbolized by electric vehicles and our reliance on these rechargeable batteries, it comes with its own set of ethical challenges.
Yeah.
These miners are essentially sacrificing their health and well-being to provide the materials that power, essentially our modern lives.
Yeah, and that's the uncomfortable truth, right? That the podcast forces us to confront.
Right.
We're all implicated in this system,
Yeah.
even if indirectly. Every time we charge our smartphones, we use our laptops, we drive an electric car, we're relying on cobalt that was likely mined under these very conditions.
So what can be done? Is there any hope for breaking this cycle of exploitation and ensuring that the Congolese people, they benefit from their nation's vast mineral wealth?
Well, the podcast, it doesn't offer easy solutions,
Right.
but it does emphasize the importance of awareness.
Mhm.
The more we understand the human cost of the products that we use, the more pressure we can exert on companies and governments
Yeah.
to implement ethical sourcing practices
Yeah.
and demand greater transparency in the supply chain.
So as consumers, we have a responsibility to be informed and make, conscious choices. But are there any concrete actions that we can take
Yeah.
to make a difference?
Absolutely. We can support companies that are actively working towards ethical cobalt sourcing.
Okay.
There are organizations that certify mines that meet certain safety and labor standards, and we can prioritize products from those companies.
That makes sense. But individual actions alone, they might not be enough to solve a problem of this magnitude. What about the role of, governments and international organizations?
They have a crucial role to play as well, for sure. Stronger regulations are needed to ensure that cobalt mining is conducted responsibly with fair labor practices, environmental protections, and a system that ensures that the profits, they benefit the Congolese people, not just, foreign corporations or corrupt
It
officials.
sounds like a multifaceted challenge that requires a collective effort, really, from consumers, companies, and governments. But knowing this history, right, understanding the connection between our everyday lives and the realities on the ground in the Congo, that's a crucial first step.
Exactly. The Throughline episode, it encourages us to see beyond, the shiny surface of our devices.
Right.
And confront the often hidden human cost of technological progress. It reminds us that history has a way of repeating itself, and it's up to us to break these destructive patterns.
This deep dive has been eye-opening, to say the least. It's a story that deserves to be widely known and discussed. What final thoughts would you leave our listeners with as they ponder, the complex issues we've explored today?
As you go about your day, as you interact with your devices, just remember the people behind those technologies. Consider the impact of your choices.
Yeah.
And explore ways to advocate for a more just and sustainable future.
Right.
For everyone, including those mining the materials that power our interconnected world.
Well, thank you for guiding us through this challenging but important conversation. And to our listeners, we encourage you to seek out the full Throughline episode on cobalt mining in the Congo. It's a powerful and thought-provoking journey
It really is.
that will stay with you long after you've finished listening. Stay curious and stay engaged.